Why, I should be delighted, Santa Claus.
Fine.
It's one of the things that I do best. That's a good pen you've got, Santa Claus.
Oh, it's a wonderful pen.
Oh.
Yes, indeed.
Must have performed like this before.
Well, my father, Santa Claus, gave it to me.
Oh!
Yes.
My God, and it's got some of the dog's hair in it.
Over 25 years ago, the first Girl Scout was seized by a desire thus to band a group of girls together for the avowed purpose of striving to make and keep a keen mind and a friendly spirit and a high courage in a strong, sturdy body. And the following year, her dream was accomplished. She was near enough girlhood herself to know that such a band would want to practice many of the activities of their elders, would want to observe, to plan, to act within their group as they saw their elders doing in their groups of cooperation. And above all, they would want much fun and frolic connected to their association together.
23 years old. Wake up.
I didn't make the nomination. Do you think we shall ever have a woman president, Mrs.
Yes,
Roosevelt?
of course we will.
How soon?
Oh, I don't know how soon. That depends on how many women do well in offices and how many women win offices and are appointed. You can't tell, but someday it will happen when you get to the point where you look at people in politics and in positions of political importance as people and not as either women or men.
Are there women today who could be president of the United States, Mrs. Roosevelt?
I've never given it much thought, but I'm sure there probably are.
Think about
You had started over.
All right, we're stopping. You go ahead anytime you want. Don't try to memorize it.
Just say it like
Just say about what you want to say.
Well, you say whatever you feel like.
I was happy to get back home again and resume a life of normal. I got the same point did before, didn't I? And quit.
Try it again. Hand me this paper, please. Take your time. We have plenty of time here.
I would hate to hear my voice again on that.
Never mind, it sounds all right.
Well, you intend to sell it back to you. Somebody take the paper, please. And go. All right.
Mark. Scene 1936.
All right, sir.
Well, I look at all our friends and neighbors, and this is really a dream come true. I'm glad that all the other folks that have spoken today haven't used that expression, because it's really true. One of the things I thought about, and I've given this a great deal of thought, because I've come a long way to get here, plus a whole month in the hospital, was that this has been done the good American way. I believe so in people doing for themselves, not depending on government. And you certainly have shown that. Thank you very much.
Mrs. John F. Kennedy greets reporters in the office of her brother-in-law, the Attorney General. The former First Lady expresses thanks for herself and her two children for the nearly 800,000 messages received since her husband's assassination. Senator Edward Kennedy is also present, as Mrs. Kennedy speaks of the letters which eventually will be placed in the Kennedy Library.
The knowledge of the affection in which my husband was held by all of you has sustained me, and the warmth of these tributes is something I shall never forget. Whenever I can bear to, I read them. All his bright light gone from the world. All of you who have written to me know how much we all loved him, and that he returned that love in full measure. It is my greatest wish that all of these letters be acknowledged. They will be, but it will take a long time to do so. But I know you will understand. May I thank you again on behalf of my children and of the President's family for the comfort that your letters have brought to us all. Thank you.
Involved in the beautification conservation effort?
Let me try to explore that. Shortly after the inauguration in January of '65, I knew I wanted to concentrate whatever I could do on whatever parts of Lyndon's program that made my heart sing, that came naturally, that belonged to me. And so I began to try to acquaint myself with all the facets of it. And all my life, nature, scenery, the beauties of this country had just been my joy, what fueled my spirit, made me happy. And Lyndon made a speech, and as I recall, it was at Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I think it was about February of '65, anyhow, early on into the, and it was a great deal of it was about the environment, about conservation, and I decided that's for me. And Stuart Udall, Secretary of the Interior, who was an expert salesman, came to see me, hoping to interest me in the field of conservation, for the national parks, for whatever. We were both exploring, and it was, to me, it was the right choice. So we began to form a committee, and we were going to work right there in our hometown, committee for a more beautiful national capital. Put on it people who had spent their lives in environmental efforts of some sort or another, like Lawrence Rockefeller and Mary Lasker, and then the heads of the Park Service, people who had a natural relation to that, and the city heads head of the City Planning Commission, and here I have to be imprecise about names. And we got underway, and we hoped it would have a ripple effect. And the early concept was that the way L'Enfant had laid out the city of Washington, with all those circles and triangles, where mostly there were at that time just maybe a dilapidated fallen down bench and a few scraggy plants, that if we began to plant those beautifully and make them centers for people to sit and rest on a spring or summer day and contemplate our beautiful capital, that it would have a ripple effect not only in the pride of people in their capital city, but in their own whole town of Keokuk, Iowa, Selma, Alabama, or wherever they might be. So we were just a bunch of pioneers sort of feeling our way. And let me say right here, the word beautification never really suited any of us, and we struggled to find something else, but not successfully. So we stayed with the word. Let me though quickly say, to me it was always just part of the whole broad tapestry of environment: clean air, clean water, free rivers, the preservation of scenic areas. It was just, it had its niche in the whole broad field, which became a consuming interest to me in the next 5 years, and will always be. I am hooked.
Was your role in to bring it onto a larger stage or a more national forum, and magnify the importance of beautification?
Yes. You see, in a way, I think we were both riding a wave and trying to make that wave surge forward. I think the time had come in our national consciousness to look at the environment and question what man was doing to harm it, how we could harness those harmful things without doing, would still let free enterprise and industry serve the country, but preserve the environment while we were doing it. And I think it was, we marched hand in hand with thought whose time was about to come. And I think that whatever service we performed was to walk this onto the national stage, put it on the national agenda, and yes, beautification, prissy word though it may be, became sort of the business of the politician, the businessman, the newspaper editor, and not just ladies over a cup of tea. We broadened the scope of it, I hope, I think, and made awareness of it. That was, because the more you read about it, the more concerned you became about the world you had known as a child and how rapidly it could slip through fingers and the next generation would not inherit it as beautiful and clean and full of flowers and open spaces as you remembered. So, in whatever ways I could touch that problem, I tried.
You mentioned Stuart Udall, but were there any particular writings or other individuals that influenced your thinking on conservation and the environment?
As for early writings, I just I grew up out in the country and read all the nature books that came my way. I cannot remember the names of writers now. I think Ernest Thompson Seton might have been one of them. And it was people and events and memories. And early on, Lawrence Rockefeller became one of those who influenced me, and I read about all the things his family had done, as wide a scope as as Mesa Verde out in the far west, and the Blue Ridge Mountains, huge areas there, and just lots and lots of land along the Hudson River. Mary Lasker and her determination to have a flag of brilliant color on, was it Park Avenue, I think, in New York City, where she planted tulips and encouraged the owners of the property there to do the same. Yes, there was a spark that was struck between, in my heart, with a lot of people. And then there were sights that I will never forget. For instance, one time Lyndon and I went out on a barge into one of the Great Lakes, I think it was Lake Erie. And the subject was the pollution of our lakes and rivers. And we had so much press as we could load onto this barge. It looked like it was about to tilt over into the water. And a huge bucket went over the edge, picked up a bucketful, swung it around onto this flat barge surface. We looked at it real close. It looked like a sort of a mixture of ink and glue. And all of that was waste that was being put into those waters. You can imagine that no fish could live in it, and no plant life either. And we just had to do something about cleaning up our world, or else we couldn't inhabit it either.
Somewhere I read that during your trips from Washington back home to Texas at the close of congressional sessions, the junkyards and billboards that...
Oh, that's quite true. And then in trips across the campaign.
drive for conservation. And I wish you would repeat that in the way that you...
But of course, beautification was only one little piece in the whole environmental picture. And incidentally, it's a word we never did like. We almost despaired. Now, the action on it, there'll be plenty left for decade after decade after decade.
Mrs. Nixon, just how do you feel starting out on another campaign? You've been on quite a few yourself, haven't you?
Yes, I have, but they're always exciting, and the one that started in New Hampshire couldn't have been more so. I think even the local people were surprised at the enthusiasm and the size of the crowds and the wonderful spirit of the people.
Well, now, these are very exhausting experiences. Do you have a couple of qualms in the back of your mind about having to face so many months of this?
No, actually, I've done it so many times that I don't, and also my heart is in it. I'm a willing volunteer, I might say.
Is there anything about this campaign that you already sense is different from other campaigns in the past?
Well, not yet. There is enthusiasm, there always has been, but I feel that there's even more. And also by the mail that we receive, I feel that way. I think people now want a man of experience, and they also want a man of principle who has, and I think that fits my husband.
You're in a campaign because you want to do something about
the president asked me to tell you that he telephoned President-elect Carter a short time ago and congratulated him on his victory. The president also wants to thank all those thousands of people who worked so hard on his behalf and the millions who supported him with their votes. It's been the greatest honor of my husband's life to have served his fellow Americans during two of the most difficult years in our history. The President urges all Americans to join him in giving your united support to President-elect Carter as he prepares to assume his new responsibilities.
Ms. Carter, may I ask you first to give your assessment of these latest developments in Iran?
I don't know anything more than anybody else knows about Iran, the messages that come out of the country. I know that we have worked around the clock. The president has never stopped from day one when the hostages were taken. And I think we just have to be patient and pray for them to come home soon. They do have a government. They are going through the process. I heard the same things you heard about the Marjories not voting for them on anything. They didn't have a quorum, but that's all I know about it.
Have you talked to the president about the situation there?
Not this morning, no.
You know, the last time I talked to you, you told me that this was back in February, I think, and you said you were quite worried about the president at the time because of the hostage situation, and you said that he really wasn't getting enough sleep, and kind of for the first time in his life, you told me. I wonder, now he's campaigning, he was not campaigning in those days, how's he getting along these days?
Fine. He still worries about the hostages. We can be talking about something completely different and he'll say, and the hostages, and I'll know that it never leaves his mind. But it's difficult to campaign and run the government and do all of those things. But I think he really has done well. He has just been gone a couple of days a week until this last week, of course. And in the process, he has to run the government. Said Governor Reagan can't start a war, President Reagan could start a war. That was in 1976. So that issue has been a very pertinent issue for a long time. Whether or not Governor Reagan understood how words like that reverberate around the world. They do, and they frighten our allies, they increase tensions with the Soviet Union. I think that is a legitimate issue. We have documented statements where Governor Reagan said Social Security should be voluntary. He started his career, I guess you say, in politics, traveling around the country, speaking against Medicare. He said even in the debate the other night that Social Security should be changed. And he has been against all of the great programs that help people. That's the thing that really bothers me more than anything else. He was against civil rights movement, minimum wage, Medicare, all of the programs that help people. And I've worked with mental health programs for so long. You should see what happened in California to the mental health system. He dismantled it. Trying to save money for the state, he moved the mentally afflicted out of the institutions into the communities where the federal government traditionally cares for them. But there was nothing there in the community. They went into jails, they went into slum areas. They're not over that situation yet. So one of the things that really bothers me about, but I don't think he'll ever have a chance to be president, but one of the things that really bothers me about him is his attitude. Well, I think the first few weeks the attention was focused on a few little words taken out of context instead of the overall campaign. Because, as I said, I know how hard Jimmy Carter has worked on his speeches to show what he has done for the country and where he wants us to go into the future. The coal industry, the automobile industry, the depressed industries in the country for the past 3.5 years, almost 4 years, to see, working with them, with the officials and labor, to see what can be done to help the depressed industries. And now, after these years of study, they're coming up with recommendations, which he's implementing. We're going to revitalize the industry. And I just think the future is going to be very exciting. Those are the kinds of things that we would hope would come forward in the campaign. I think with the debate, we have focused on those some now.
Well, why do you suppose, I'm sorry. Okay.
It's true there were some rough times for my husband and me. But as I said to you 4 years ago, I always felt that I could draw on you for your support and your affection. And I did draw on you a great deal more than you knew. And I thank you for that too.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much, President Cohen. Mrs. Gorbachev, trustees, faculty, parents, and I should say Julia Porter, class president, and certainly my new best friend, Christine Bicknell. And of course, the class of 1990. I'm really thrilled to be here today, and very excited, as I know all of you must be, that Mrs. Gorbachev could join us. These are exciting times. They're exciting in Washington, and I had really looked forward to coming to Wellesley. I thought it was going to be fun. I never dreamt it would be this much fun, so thank you for that. Human being first, and those human connections with spouses, with children, with friends are the most important investment you will ever make.
Don't want the truth to be disseminated. So that's a very powerful tool for NGOs as well as international organizations. So honestly, I'm sorry, we've got 2 more people to hear from. You have a chance. Well, I'm not sorry. You sit down, and we're going to let other people. Talk. I'm going to turn now to Frank Mugisha. Frank Mugisha is a leading civil rights organizer who is...
President Joe Biden is calling for $100 billion of funding for...
I'm sorry, you know, this is not the way to have a conversation. If you want to have a conversation, you're welcome to come talk to me afterwards.
Speaking for the American people.
Well, that's your opinion. That's your opinion.
Yes, that's my
but
opinion.
Well, then sit down. We've heard your opinion. Thank you very much. Now we're going to turn to people who are on the front lines of working on behalf of human rights. But it's not free speech when you are disrupting everybody else's opportunity to speak.
Openly warmongering, suicidal, idiotic speech.
And I've given my answer. I will not do that. So that's the end of our conversation.
Okay.
But I'll still meet you outside. But you're done.
George always says he's delighted to come to these press dinners. Baloney. Well, that was to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, the famous dinner, where, as George says, everyone comes in and makes fun of the president, and then the president comes on and makes fun of himself. And so George had given actually the gridiron dinner and the alfalfa dinner and the photographer's dinner. There are a lot of dinners where the president has to have a funny speech and make fun of himself. So that year, George said, I think, I can't even come up with another joke. Why don't you do it this year? So I said, okay.
Did you say okay right away?
Yeah, I knew that I would have, obviously you work with joke writers, everyone does work with joke writers for that speech, and that it would be funny, and it was funny, and I think it was shocking to people as well. I remember I was sitting next to the president of the White House White House Correspondents, who obviously didn't know I was going to spring up, and so George stands up and, makes some joke, tries to make some sort of lame joke, and I jump up and push him out of the way and say, no, not that old joke again. And when I did it, the people that were sitting by me gasped. They were they were shocked. I mean, I think they thought something was wrong, that I was jumping up like that to move over to the podium. But it was fun. But anyway, that's when I called myself a desperate housewife. And it was funny in the United States, and everyone understands it, I think, and knows that that's a roast, and that's, what every one of those White House Correspondents' dinners are like, everyone making fun of the president. But the people from overseas were shocked, I think. And after that, when we would travel overseas, some world leader would say, "Are you a desperate housewife?" I am married to the President of the United States, and here's our typical evening. 9 o'clock. Mr. Excitement here is sound asleep. And I'm watching Desperate Housewives. With Lynn Cheney. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a desperate housewife. I mean, if those women on that show think they're desperate, they ought to be with George.
I think you also compared your mother-in-law to Don Corleone in that speech.
Exactly.
What was her reaction?
You'll have to ask her.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. It's hard to believe that it has been 8 years since I first came to this convention to talk with you about why I thought my husband should be president. Remember how I told you about his character and conviction, his decency and his grace, the traits that we've seen every day that he served our country in the White House. I also told you about our daughters, how they are the heart of our hearts, the center of our world, and during our time in the White House, we've had the joy of watching them grow from bubbly little girls into as President of the United States of America. So let's get to work. Thank you all, and God bless.
for your service. I'm honored to be your First Lady. We will fight, we will win, and we will make America great again. Thank you.
It's decorated. And the theme this year is peace and light. So I hope that you all feel that sense of, peace and light, and that just for a moment when you leave here today that you feel, a sense of joy. Because I think we all need we all need to feel joy now during this time of the season, during this time. So anyway, okay, now I'll start. You're all reading into that. Anyway.
Good evening, New York City. Hello, Madison Square Garden. Our hometown, where architectural symbols of strength, courage, and unity create a canvas for the world's undisputed capital of industry. Where titans of finance, fashion, and entertainment convene among an iconic range of superior design, structures, and artistic accomplishments. And American ingenuity blossoms among determined citizens who race across city streets and between offices, striving for success. It is you who are the heartbeat of this great metropolis. It is you who are the pulse of this America. Yet, New York City is unforgiving. In fact, our lives are complicated even during the best of times. And sadly, today, a declining quality of life coupled with economic instability makes it difficult for business to thrive. Love you too. Crime is on the rise, while public safety diminishes, creating an environment where families with young children choose to relocate. And this story repeats itself from coast to coast across our nation. This is America. For generations, this town has produced America's most fearless leaders, whose mark changed the course of the world. New York City and America needs their magic back. A country of tomorrow that will shape our future and reset expectations for the generations. Envision a wonderful America where the seeds of security, prosperity, and health are sown once again for benefit of our families. Let us charge together with a shared vision that builds on American greatness. Let's seize this moment and create a country for tomorrow, the future that we deserve. And now, Commander-in-Chief, my husband, President Donald J. Trump.